Well, hello everybody. This is Mav and this is Mav Magic, the channel as well. I'm still getting used to the live stream format, friends. So forgive me if, this is weird a little bit. All right, so today we're going to be having our little discussion about grounded spirituality. This is a really, really, really important topic to me right now, particularly because I spent a lot of time being very much ungrounded in my spirituality. And it was like pretty concerning, and I didn't enjoy it very much. Well, I enjoyed it while it was happening, but it caused some problems. I've got everything here ready. If you're gonna sit in and join me, make sure you've got, a drink or two. I have two with me today, tea and water, and we're just gonna dive in. If you join, make sure you just let me know where you're at, and if you're watching on a replay, just let me know that you're watching. Yeah, awesome. So we're gonna jump in here, and just like the other live stream I did, we're gonna do a similar format, and I'm gonna kind of read through a previous article that I wrote, pause every now and again and give a little bit of commentary. And it'll be kind of a cool experience because I have like some links in the article that I wrote, and we'll kind of go through those links as well in this video. So this will be a kind of full rundown of all these concepts and ideas that I processed and worked on and everything. And I'm gonna start sharing all of this with you. So let me make sure everything here is set up and ready. Okay. We're good there. All right. Also, if you are joining here, make sure to like and share and subscribe to the channel. Share the stream if you're watching with anybody. Also, make sure you comment, let me know where you're watching from. I totally want to have you all participate with me as well. And yeah, some other things, you can follow me. Also, you can check in the description below for a spot where you can support the channel if you're interested. So yeah, we're going to dive in now. All right, so let's go. I wanted to do it this way. All right. I hope that this is good enough for people to see. I might make it, maybe I'll make it bigger for certain parts, because I could do that on this streaming thing. Okay, I'm going to stop rambling and start the article. All right, so if you have been following my YouTube channel for a while, you know that I've been recently going through a lot of changes with my spirituality. In 1 year, I went from being an aspiring spiritual leader, energy healer, and mystic to being an atheist. This transformation hit me like a ton of bricks. There was a time I was definitely delusional, and I definitely had some beliefs that mirrored other people's experiences with spiritual psychosis. So coming down from that was rough. I was super bummed out about this and felt I would be empty forever without a spiritual path. However, after looking around for a while and doing some soul searching, I discovered some truths that helped me find a form of spirituality that allows me to have my cake and eat it too. I'd like to share some of my honest thoughts and opinions with you about how I became more grounded, how to become more grounded in your spirituality. All right. Let's dive in. So one of the first truths that I was taught during my spiritual awakening was that I was a spiritual being living a human experience. If you have spent any time at all in spiritual circles, I'm sure that you've heard this. And yeah, that'll be important as we move on. So in my Christian background, I had believed in a literal spiritual realm, but I didn't really focus too much on the mechanics of the soul. I just thought that it was this thing that made us come to life, and it was also the same thing that goes to heaven or hell when we die. Obviously, this was when I was a Christian. So after leaving Christianity, I had to figure out what to believe about the soul. And moving to kind of a more spiritual, I didn't write this down, but moving to a more spiritual, like a generic spiritual belief, a lot of new age stuff is floating around in there. When I was practicing this stuff, I wouldn't have said that I was a new age believer. I would have like actually like been vehemently against it. But I had a lot of New Age beliefs. Yeah. So yeah, after leaving Christianity, I had to figure out what to do about the soul. So the popular New Agey teachings about the unlimited power of the soul were very alluring. I found myself leaning further and further into the spiritual realm, truly driven by a hunger for spiritual wisdom and power. So this was, and me explaining this line a little bit deeper, I really was being honest in the sense that like I had to really admit that there was a part of me that was really interested in power spiritually. Um, I think that especially if you're a person who spent a lot of time being like torn down for things for a variety of reasons, especially a lot during your childhood years, you have a huge desire for power. And I think, yeah, a little bit of my shadow side, I guess, showed up there, and I wasn't really aware of it then, but now I can definitely see how I was a little bit power hungry, so to speak. All right. Yeah. Yeah, I think it takes a little bit of humility to be able to admit that. And I wasn't able to do that before. So, yeah. All right. So, a new age teaching that I embraced was that I was the creator of my own reality. I chose all of the challenges I would have in this life before I incarnated. I was taught that I did this so that my soul would evolve and learn lessons. I believed that I was a soul that made a decision to carnate into this body and this experience. I was certain that my thoughts created my reality. I could manifest the life of my dreams if I tried hard enough and I believed just right. I started putting these beliefs to the test and noticed a radical transformation in my life. My anxiety practically vanished, and I was on the way to building the life I always wanted. And that's really true, by the way. There was a time during this space period of my life, I really thought my anxiety was gone. I thought I was cured, y'all. And it was really cool. It was a really cool, exciting experience when it happened. But things happen, and I am an anxious person by nature, so my anxiety came back naturally. Okay. And there's other stuff like neurodivergence plays into that as well. So like you can't, like, for example, like you can process your anxiety and you can like improve your anxiety, but you can't like make yourself not have sensory issues. Like that's just something that you have. Anyway. All right. So my anxiety practically vanished, and I was on the way to building the life I always wanted. Fast forward about a year, and I was depressed and broke after a shitty financial investment. And the whole time I was wondering how I was manifesting all of this pain into my life. And I want you to know how messed up that was. I really, this is why some of this stuff is problematic in my opinion, is because people who get into crappy situations blame themselves. They're like, what did I do? Like, what was I thinking in order to make this happen? And in some senses, like if a person does things that like aren't, like they haven't thought them through, like the product of that might not have a good result in the end, which is what happened to me. I didn't really think about the decision that I made, and I made a decision and it didn't work out well. So like that makes a lot of sense. It's not like I had a bad thought and then the universe punished me for it. It was like I didn't use critical thinking. And then that was a natural consequence of that. So I hope that this stuff makes sense. Like obviously your decisions have an impact on like what happens and how your life looks like, but it's not like the things that you think are literally creating your reality. And hopefully in the future, I'll hopefully do an entire video just on that topic, because I think that it's one that a lot of people just toss around all the time. Okay. So the beliefs that I had hoped would give me freedom and peace ultimately failed me, and I was back at the start. Honestly, at this point, I was willing to give up on spirituality altogether. This led me to delve into the world of atheism and skepticism. During this time, I found myself in the process of a second deconstruction. This was a deconstruction of all the supernatural beliefs I held. I finally subjected those beliefs to scrutiny and most of them began to fall apart. The one belief I felt that I couldn't shake was that of the soul. I knew that the soul was real. I knew the experiences I've had, and no one can take my subjective experiences away from me. So yeah, just to say a little bit about that, like I've had some interesting experiences um, that have have felt very real to me, and I would consider spiritual experiences. And so at this time, while I was kind of thinking and my mindset was here, I was really like, what the hell? Like what was that? Like I knew that I had an experience. If it's not some mystical supernatural thing, then what the hell happened to me? You know what I mean? And maybe I'll talk about that in another video, but that's kind of also kind of personal, and I might not talk about that on the channel, like in front of other people. But who knows? Let me know in the comments if you want to hear about it. Maybe I will if there's enough people who care. All right. So as a Christian and a spiritual person, I always felt that deep, deep longing for something more. I couldn't deny the feeling of the Holy Spirit I got when I was a Christian, or the waves of spiritual energy I felt on my spiritual journey. Those were very real to me. And because of these things, I was resistant to deconstructing those beliefs. Because without a soul, without something more, what was there to live for? Another important question I needed to answer was, what were those visceral spiritual experiences I had, and where did they come from if not from the soul? And I mentioned that earlier. So it might be a little bit repetitive as I go through this, but I hope that's all right. And after a few weeks of denial and avoidance, I started to dig into the research. Being confronted with evidence that confronts your current view of reality is awful. You are tempted to be immediately defensive of your beliefs, and you may even reject the evidence entirely. And the reason why I was able to temporarily set aside my beliefs that I had previously made a commitment. The reason why I was able to temporarily set aside my beliefs was that I had previously made a commitment to skepticism and epistemology. This means that I learned the importance of being critical of new information and making sure that the evidence presented is trustworthy and reliable. This will all pretty much become clear as I read this section. I don't really have a lot of commentary on this part. So to get to this place, I had to start learning how to do this. I started learning from street epistemologists and started asking myself questions about my beliefs. I want to share this process with you so that you can also have a framework to ask yourself the tough questions. Okay, so here's the process. The first step is to investigate a claim. So this could be, for example, God exists, or I believe God exists. That is your first claim. So you're going to investigate that claim. And then second, you would ask for definitions to clarify the claim. So you would ask, like, what do I mean by God? Is God just a higher power? Are you meaning the specific God of the Bible? Or are you just asking if a higher power exists generally? So you need to get specific about what you actually believe. And then third, you want to ask yourself how confident you are in the belief. So just ask yourself, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident you are in this particular belief. Fourth, you want to ask why you believe this particular thing. So your particular reasons could be things like the Bible tells me so, or God has answered my prayers in the past, so I know he's real. Okay. Fifth, you want to ask if your reason for believing is reliable. Is the source itself reliable? So if you say the Bible tells me so, well, is the Bible a reliable source? The second thing is, if your reasoning is God has answered my prayers, you have to say, are there prayers that God hasn't answered in your life? Has that ever happened? Another question is, how can you prove that it was God that answered your prayer and it wasn't chance and it wasn't your cousin who just gave you, a random $20 bill or something? How do you know that it's God? And then sixth, you reevaluate your belief. So you can just go again from the 1 to 10 scale if you'd like, or you can just kind of like mentally grasp, where your level of belief is. That's kind of how I've done it. Okay. So the 3 options, and I'm sure there are more, but obviously this is just for brevity and generalization. So option 1 is after you've done everything, you can ignore the evidence and continue to believe what you believed. Option 2 is that you can accept the evidence and completely change your belief. And option 3 is interesting, is one where you can accept the evidence, but also keep the belief. So this means that you fully accept that your beliefs are outside of reality. Some spiritual people, including myself, have thought that believing in the God of the Bible was silly, while simultaneously believing that they're channeling aliens from the Pleiades. You can't say that one spiritual belief is silly and ridiculous while you're believing something that is completely unfounded. Yeah, I hope that's self-explanatory in and of itself. Yeah, channeling and things like that, those are awesome experiences. And for the person who's doing the channeling, I think that you can have a lot of insight. But for example, if you look at all of the different people that are doing channeling and stuff like that, they're saying a lot of the same stuff. And yeah, if y'all do any research on the origins of these types of philosophies, they all come from the same place and they all come from people. So do your research. Okay. Yeah. So basically, you have to accept that your beliefs are no more provable than others. So this process has really helped me let go of so many things. It really has helped me in my deconstruction process, and I've ended up letting go of a ton of beliefs, and this process was really difficult. But as I mentioned before, it was tough for me to confront my beliefs about the soul because of how precious it was to me. And saying goodbye to this belief meant that I had to say goodbye to the spiritual path entirely. So, like I said, I reluctantly started searching, and then I chose to line my beliefs up with the epistemological process. Okay, I trusted that this process was reliable for our consensus reality that we're all living in. I can touch myself and feel that my face is real, this type of reality, right? Okay, so all right, here's what I came up with in regards to the soul. So I started off with my belief, and my belief was that the soul is real. Okay, simple as that. And then second, I needed to ask, sorry about that. Okay. Second, I needed to ask for definitions and so that I could clarify this claim. And to clarify this belief, basically, I believed that a human being is an immaterial soul inside of a physical body. The soul is this immaterial thing, this magical thing that is able to astral travel, and it reincarnates when we die. Yeah, that's pretty much the best I can do about the soul. And if you were to ask a bunch of different spiritual people, they might give you all slightly different answers. It's just it's a very mysterious, invisible self that kind of lives inside of you or something like that. Okay, so third, I ask, how confident am I in this belief? So at the time, I was 100%, or rather, okay, right before I started researching this, I was 100% confident about the soul. No one really could tell me otherwise. And that's also problematic when you have a belief that you're so confident in that you feel like nobody can tell you anything different. That can be questionable, especially if you're talking about things once again in consensus reality. If you're I had a dream, and you're okay, no one's gonna disagree with you on that, or I like green, of course, not that kind of stuff, leaves, this leaf is green, that type of thing. All right, so yeah, I was 100% confident in this belief for most of my life, but by the time I asked myself these questions, I was kind of skeptical, so I was kind of at 80%. And then fourth, I had to ask myself why I believed this. So these were a couple of the reasons that I came up with why I believed in the soul. So the soul was a requirement for the afterlife. This means that my belief in the afterlife may also need to be assessed, especially if I'm using it as evidence to support another claim. So that's there. And the other thing that was another reason why I believed was because I have read other people's experiences with astral travel and out-of-body experiences. They sound really compelling. Another thing that has impacted me was the felt sense of the soul, the experience of the soul. I know what I have felt and experienced, and that shit was real. So pretty much it was a subjective experience, very, very real subjective experience, but it felt like compelling enough evidence. So yeah, oh, oopsie. Okay. All right. So the fifth part of this is to ask yourself, is my reason for believing this reliable? So I kind of went through each point. So there wasn't a way to prove the afterlife, so that's unreliable. Astral travel and out of body experiences have been studied, and scientists have discovered that they are inner body hallucinations that are able to be recreated when the physical brain is stimulated. So, this is an article about the God helmet that I said I would also share with you all. Great. That went in a new window and it was supposed to go in a new tab. Okay, that didn't work. Let me try this one more time. Okay, here we go. All right, so I'm just gonna peek at this article really quickly. Not gonna spend too much time here, but I just wanted to show it to everybody so that everyone can see what I'm talking about here. Let me make sure this is okay. Well, that's as big as it wants to get. So it shows that in the late 1990s, there was a frenzy for neuroscientific experiences for everything. And yes, there was a study pretty much that kind of claimed they had found God and that God exists in the brain. All experiences are determined by brain activity. I'm trying to just see a couple of other things. So here is obviously this is just a cartoon thing, but this is kind of what the brain helmet does. And it's able to generate things and yeah, so it can kind of imitates a transcendental experience. And he is also able to do this in the lab. This was super interesting because, and this section right here is particularly interesting because when they did research on a person who was meditating, they kind of discovered that what was going on when she was having a very like mystical experience when she was with God, she was actually going through a complex partial right here epileptic seizure in the right hemisphere on her brain. And so that was what was going on with her. She is thinking in her life, in her subjective experience, she is seeing God, right? She is with God. But according to science, according to our consensus reality that we can actually prove, she was having an absence seizure. And here we go. The scientist says he didn't have the heart to tell her that she was having a seizure. Ooh, wow, that was intense. So yeah, I obviously have this article linked down below, and you can read through the whole thing if you want to see more of it. And it basically shows that like they can create out of body experiences that people claim are proof of an afterlife or proof of a spiritual realm. They can recreate those through scientific methods. Does that mean, could there potentially be some type of way that there is another method of, going through these beliefs or, going through some type of experiences, and this was, just one way to access God? Sure. Perhaps that's what's going on here. I just don't know, right? And this is all I can prove. And what I feel like I would like to commit to is like talking about shit that I know, talking about shit that I can prove, and not just saying stuff because I don't know, like it seems fun or seems nice or whatever. Like I don't want to do that. I want to at least say that I know what's going on. So, and the other thing is, I also this article really also it goes very, very deep and detailed into a lot of this stuff, and it even shares a video that I'm going to share with you in just a little bit about out of body experiences. So check that out if you're interested in learning a little bit more about this stuff. And okay, so next was stories about people's near-death experiences, NDEs, and the children's detailed stories about their past lives. Kind of seemed like significant and sufficient evidence for the soul, but with some scrutiny, those are kind of found to be anecdotal evidence and can't really be considered reliable. So yeah, Another article here discusses how the phenomenon of near-death experiences is caused by abnormal functioning and dopamine and also oxygen flow. This is a very, very brief, I think it's like like a 3-second article here that just kind of states that here near-death experiences reported by patients have a scientific explanation. The phenomenon is thought to be caused by abnormal functioning of dopamine and oxygen flow. So, there it is. Like, I'm not gonna lie, folks. Like before, I would read this stuff and be like, I don't care. I just am choosing to believe what I want to believe. And I just believe that people who are scientists who like have dedicated their life to this stuff have no idea what they're talking about. Do some people not know what they're talking about? Sure, I'm sure. Is all of science perfect? Not at all, not by a long shot. But are there some things that might be more reliable than others? I think so. Yeah, for sure. Okay. So yes. So now, okay, I'm very excited for this part. I'm gonna watch this video with you all. I think it's amazing. I just think it's so good, and it's just helpful. It helps people see that some of the things that they are kind of choosing to believe may not be as like factual as other people are claiming for them to be, and if we do want to believe that the things that we see in our heads and that we see when we're meditating are actually real, there are some serious implications about that, and I just don't think that this should be taken lightly. That's all I'm saying. So let's watch this video together. I'll probably pause this as well. Let's, let me see if yeah. So I love that. Like, so basically, like all of these people are having these experiences, and these people, they're probably not lying, they're probably not exaggerating, they're probably honest. Like, maybe, hopefully, but also like people can lie. People can misremember things and say things with like a genuine, gusto, but like it doesn't mean that it's true or real. You know, yeah. Let's continue. Mhm. Yeah. Oh, yikes. Just real quick, like, isn't this so incredible? Like, this is incredible and this is real. Um, like, I don't need to believe in anything. Let me just try to make this a little bit bigger for a second. I don't need to believe in anything in order to see that this is really cool, right? If I were to believe in, like, for example, in God, right? Like in a literal being that is God, like I would have to believe in God. I would have to have experiences and then kind of collect them and then start to believe that God is real. I don't have to believe in anything for this. Not saying that believing is bad, but that's pretty much where we're at. Oh my gosh. Hey, Beth. Beth is in the house, everyone. So if you're here, share the love. All right. Let's move on. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So for a person like me who was raised in evangelical Christianity, like everything about the world was very magical, right? The world was created from this magical being who like wished everything into existence in like a millisecond, right? So, if you that's why there was a popular image that went viral about like the angel over the truck. Let me see if that video will come up or that picture will come up. You see, well, and this is also, I think, so this is the picture, right? They're like, oh my gosh, everyone, an angel was over the truck. God is blessing. It was a freaking moth, folks. It was a moth. So people with magical thinking, like already are very, very susceptible to believing things. Like when they have personal experiences, they're like, wow, this was God. This was something magical. Um, yeah. And also listen to me, y'all. If you are in like a ceremonial space, like a spiritual ceremonial space, and they're like, okay, you're going to have this experience and you're going to meet with this deity, and then you do, like, duh. Like it's, you've been primed for that to have that subjective experience by suggestion. So yeah, I hope that this stuff is making sense. Uh-oh. Right. Beautiful. Okay, very beautiful. So Ah, damn it. Sorry, I heard the video that I just played was really, really quiet. So if you do want to check this video out on your own, the link is in the description to the video that I sent. So that's unfortunate if you couldn't hear a lot of that, but it's very, very good. So make sure you go back and check it out. Basically, this was just a great example of Michael Shermer, who's a pretty popular skeptic person. Um, yeah, he's a pretty popular skeptic, and he is like pretty. Yeah, I'm saying that like he's a skeptical guy, and if he can have like a kind of like mystical experience like this, and I think that it does help show that this is kind of a legitimate thing. Um, but yeah, I'm going to continue with some of my own insights that I found, and kind of like where I landed in terms of my beliefs about the soul. So, okay. All right. So, okay. So another reason that I had to kind of come up with was that I had the personal experience about the soul, and that's where I talk about that here. So the felt sense of the soul is something that I know is real. My own experience is proof. However, my interpretation of this evidence could be flawed. There it is. So I assume that my experiences were proof of a literal spiritual realm that everyone is a part of. This also meant that I believed that those who didn't believe in a soul were just ignorant of their own reality. However, I have to ask myself if there are other ways for me to interpret this evidence. There is a possibility that these experiences are purely biological. So I know that the experiences that I had were real, but I wasn't sure what they meant anymore. Okay, so right, hope that makes that kind of, I think, speaks for itself. So now it's time for the sixth step, which is reevaluating my belief. Pretty much, I realized that I didn't want to ignore the evidence, and I'm a very skeptical person now, so that I can't just believe things anymore. So yeah, so I chose to kind of go with the last option, which is choosing to accept the evidence and to continue to keep the belief. But I also lost the belief, but I'll explain. I'll explain and make it clear in just a second. So after accepting the evidence, I decided to believe in the experiences I've had. So my experiences are very meaningful to me, and they were significant moments on my spiritual path, and I couldn't deny them. I also knew that my felt experience of God and the soul are very real. However, I can't prove that I have an immaterial soul or consciousness that is separate from our bodies or separate from my body. And since there is no evidence for the soul, my belief in the afterlife has also kind of moved to a more skeptical position. So it could be real, but it is simply impossible for us to know for certain. So yeah, I lost the belief. It felt sad, like I'll explain. So now that I had deconstructed the belief, I felt kind of pissed. I felt like my whole life, like I spent my whole life working for spiritual growth and strengthening my supernatural abilities for nothing. I was actually depressed for a few weeks during this time as I was integrating this belief into my psyche. Letting go of the external spiritual realm was very sad for me. I knew I would have to talk about my beliefs on my YouTube channel, and I would have to own up to sharing beliefs without having evidence for them. And which is funny because Beth, I know that you're watching here, and you supported me in making that decision on that other live stream on TikTok, if you remember. So yeah, I appreciate community. Anyway, so I've gotten through the tough stuff, and I've owned up to my changed beliefs. It's challenging to do that, but I finally felt confident enough to start talking to people about my opinions, which is a really big deal for me. And the thing was, I had to know more about the spiritual experiences that I've had. And if it wasn't supernatural, then what was it? So the other thing that I wanted to mention was like, it is super weird for me to talk about me being an atheist, like it feels very weird. Like even when I say it now, it still feels funny. I think because I was not a fan of atheists for a very long time in my life. I can say that now. I wouldn't have admitted to it earlier, but I can say it now because I'm an atheist. I can be honest that I was like an atheist hater for a long time. I don't For a lot of reasons. I just didn't understand it. It didn't make any sense to me. Um, but here I am now. So it's hard. Sometimes doing this work is really hard. It's very confusing. You have to kind of like I said, it took a while for the belief to kind of like integrate into my psyche. It's really, really challenging and frustrating at a lot of times. Um, and Beth says, I went from thinking the atheists were evil to being an asshole atheist for a while. And I resonate with that. I think I luckily skipped that phase. I've heard that a lot of ex Christians and stuff go through that phase. And I definitely did. I definitely missed that one. I think because I'm not sure exactly why. I think actually because I learned from other people who said that it's not useful. And then I was like, okay, that's helpful. All right. So now I was back on the hunt for an understanding of secular forms of spirituality and how to understand the mystical without the supernatural. The thing is, when I'm looking for information outside of the material evidence-based world, epistemology just doesn't work quite as well. A lot of spiritual experiences aren't repeatable or provable, really. You can do a meditation and have an incredible blissful experience, but then try to do the same exact meditation the next day and then feel nothing. So I was confused and I needed a way to make sense of the spiritual path. Yeah. And thanks, Beth. I did my best. And eventually I discovered a spiritual teacher. I think he has a YouTube channel. He's called like Zen Lauren. So he introduced me to this concept called biospirituality, which is a body-based spiritual practice grounded in our biological, psycho-emotional energy that flows through our bodies. So basically like our emotions are the energy that everybody's talking about. You feel a vibe. It's just an emotion. It's a feeling. Like animals are feeling-based creatures, or mammals, I think, are feeling-based creatures. And we're one of them. So, yeah. All right. So he talked about how he deconstructed his many spiritual, he talked about how he deconstructed beliefs from many spiritual paths, including Scientology, Christianity, and New Age spirituality. He knew what it felt like to be delusional, then to have to face reality. He talked about how he had incredible mystical experiences and the ways he was able to ground himself afterwards. If I would summarize what I've learned from his teachings is that we are just humans, feeling-driven animals that have evolved an incredible bioimagination. We are incredibly skilled at creating inner worlds within our minds, and it is within these worlds that the spiritual realm exists. We have brains that see faces in everything. We make connections and we seek patterns. We seek out patterns that make us prone to confirmation bias. We can have very real visual, auditory, and tactile hallucinations. We are very powerful in this way. This also means that we can use spiritual and religious tools to improve our lives, especially if we are well grounded in reality with Mother Earth, who literally gave birth to us over millennia. And I also heard Zen talking one day about how, like, I think a lot of spirit, like he is very much against the idea of dualism, about believing that you are a spirit inside of a body, and kind of says that people who do believe that, his claim is that like they really truly cannot be as deeply connected to the earth because they deny their connection, their innate connection to it. That's his perspective. He also says this little thing called like eat the grapes and spit out the seeds, meaning that like you can learn from different teachers. You don't have to embody all of their teachings. You can kind of take what feels good and then like, or not take what feels good, but take what resonates with you, take what makes sense, what feels correct, and then leave the rest. So there's tons of stuff of his that I leave behind, and there's things of his that I take with me that I think are useful. And these are the things that I think are useful so far. Okay, so to sum it up, his teachings were exactly what I was looking for: a grounded spiritual practice that prioritizes critical thinking. It honestly was very foolish of me to think that saying goodbye to the soul was the end of spirituality for me. And that was just my black and white thinking showing up. I've now established an understanding of spirituality that is much more grounded in reality, which is really nice and really comfortable. And I feel a whole lot like whole bunch safer nowadays. I feel less susceptible to being bamboozled because I've been bamboozled a lot. All right. And yeah, and Beth says I'm trying to embrace taking what resonates. It feels weird after all the black and white thinking in religion. And I think it is pretty tricky because in religion, it's pretty much like you have to believe everything we're saying. And if you don't, then it's like, bad. But like, for example, I have taken a lot of grapes figuratively from Christianity. There's so much good stuff hidden in there, like good for the spiritual path, even like a grounded spiritual experience. But if you believe everything, there are risks to feeling very disconnected from reality. But yeah. Okay. So I now believe that the supernatural cannot be proven in our material world with a scientific method. And I think that literally is an accepted fact, even by spiritual people. Maybe not all of them. Anyway, the mystical experiences we have are very, very real, but they are just that, subjective experiences. And just because I have a vision that I was a warrior in a past life doesn't mean that past lives exist for everyone. If I do a ceremony to channel an ascended master and I have an incredible session with a bunch of wonderful insights, that's awesome. It just doesn't mean that ascended masters actually exist and that we can contact real immaterial beings, right? So just because we have a vision of God that feels super real doesn't mean that God exists. I hope that this makes sense. This process really does require a ton of critical thinking. And one of the hallmarks of grounded spirituality is critical thinking. You have to think and weigh the evidence before you accept the belief. You have to be cautious when spiritual teachers say, this information is only supposed to connect with those who are ready to hear the truth. I want to pause here because that's really important. A lot of New Age spiritual teachers, esoteric teachers and stuff, a lot of those texts will say things like that. Like, this text is only meant for those who feel resonance to it, or something like that. One thing that comes to mind is like the tablets of like Thoth or something like that. I'm pretty sure there's a line in there about that. And anyone who's like really deeply into like hermetics or anything like that probably has read some of that kind of work. And I know how I felt like special after a while, because like when you listen to this stuff after a while, you start to feel like special, like I'm the one and I can understand these really complicated words. And at the end of the day, a lot of it is like word salady. They're just kind of like saying a whole bunch of stuff. But yeah, you just like claim that you understand everything because it makes you feel better about yourself. And yeah, I'm just being really honest, honestly, guys, because there's no point in not being honest anymore. All right. So yeah. Okay. So and then the other thing is, be cautious when people tell you to only rely on your intuition. Okay. Your intuition is a very valuable tool, but you should be able to use evidence when you're making decisions and considering new beliefs, right? Like, I hope that makes sense to you. And what I say is this, right? If you were shown I think I've said this before, but if you were shown two houses and they looked the same, right, on a piece of paper, and you were to say, let me just lean with my intuition to see which one is the best one. And you might sense one seems like the one for you. But like, maybe it's the one for you, but maybe it's also the one that has like termite damage and like its roof is about to collapse and all this stuff. Like, is that ordained for you? Like, maybe it is. But do you hear what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to just rely on your intuition and see what feels right. Like, you can also make a decision based on evidence. Like, is this house actually like sturdy? Is it in the area that we want it to be? Like, etc. There are certain things that we really should have evidence for. Other things we can be whimsical about, like, what color do I want to paint my room? Like, where do I want to go? Like, I'm going to go on a vacation. Where do I want to go? Like, I can be whimsical about those things, right? We can make into intuitive decisions. Like, where do I want to go eat today? Like, what feels good? Like, I want to go to the park. Like, we can make intuitive decisions, but we can't allow our intuition to be the only thing that drives us. I did that for a while. And I was a mean person because all I cared about was like making sure that I got what I thought my intuition was saying that I needed. And I became really selfish. Because we're human beings. We're human beings. And we are very selfish creatures. It is just the way that we are. We are self-serving. We love to feel good. And sometimes we don't care if it means other people won't feel good, right? That is just that is our nature. And that's okay. Like, at the same time, we have this in our nature, but we also can be nice. We can also connect to people. We can be kind. All these things are true. Okay. All right, cool. We're almost done. So another valuable tool on the spiritual path is your emotions. Your emotions are a direct connection to your inner child who is in need of healing and support. We all have inner wounds that we run away from. The spiritual path is partially about tending to your inner child's wounds in order to become your fullest self. Our emotions also give us a way to connect to our own inner worlds, which is basically the spiritual realm. And this is in my experience, of course. And so learning how to fully feel your emotions is a task that not everyone will want to take on, and that's okay. Like, this path, the spiritual path, is just not for everyone. Not everyone is going to be interested in doing stuff like this. And another important note is that life-changing growth is also possible outside of the spiritual path. It's just not exclusive to spiritual folks. I think that, once again, spiritual people get very high on their spiritual narcissism, and they're like, we are doing the thing, like, we are making it so that we're living our best lives. Like, not necessarily. Like, there are a lot of different versions of a good life, and people can access that without spirituality, in the general term. I think that people can also run away from peace if they're running away from themselves and things like that. And really, at the same time, I really think that spirituality is just like getting to know yourself as a person and like being a human being. It's very simple. People make it complicated and do all this other stuff. But yeah, so discovering this new truth was really liberating. I finally found a belief system that felt a little bit more reliable. Now I'm very open to my beliefs changing if new evidence is discovered and presented. I really hope that this breakdown is helpful to all of you and also assists you in your reconstruction or deconstruction process. And I'm not done sharing these ideas. I have a ton more work, and I want to work on more content examining other spiritual beliefs and putting them to scrutiny and see how they hold up. So please let me know if there's any topics particularly that you want me to break down. I have a couple things that I'm already interested in, but let me know what interests you, and I can see if those things work. So I appreciate you sticking the end and reading my story. And I really encourage you to question yourself and your beliefs. And I recommend you stay grounded in reality. So, and that's pretty much it. Thank you for chilling out here with me for a little bit. I think I do want to ramble for a couple more minutes. So this is just the article. If you want to hang out for a little bit, that's cool. But yeah, I'm in this place now where, like, this, I shit you not, friends. Like, this is the most liberated I've ever felt. And I was like spiritually high for like several months in a row. And that was liberating, but in a different sense. So like, I spent like when I say I was really delusional, like I really was, like, I was like living, like I was here obviously, and I could hold conversations with people normally, but like I wasn't on the same planet as everybody else. I really wasn't. And it's kind of scary to look back at it from now. And even though I said it was scary, it was great while it was happening. It feels so good and it's so much fun. That's why people say, like, I've heard a lot of people say things like some of my best memories and my best, most exciting and fun moments were when I was like in a cult. Like, for example, with like this whole new age ideology, you have some really awesome times when you're believing that stuff. It is nice, for sure. And also I had really great times when I was a Christian, like feeling super connected and super like loved by God. Like I've had super great experiences. But at the same time, there was like an instability in that, and like a knowledge that it was like not something that was sustainable. And so like there was always a little bit of it was a bittersweet type of thing, especially when like you would come off of the high of it. But now it's like I don't know. It's really hard to describe. This is it's a new space for me entirely. So yeah, it's tough to describe exactly what this feels like, but it feels like things make sense. The world hasn't really made as much sense as it does right now. For example, I think like all religions and stuff try to solve the problem of evil. For example, that's one of the first things about what was I saying? Crap. See what happens, y'all, is my brain does this thing where it brings up ideas and it runs away very instantly. I forget what I was saying exactly, but like something about spirituality and my beliefs. And it was going to be a good one, but I forget what it was. That's okay. I think it was something about being grounded in spirituality and how beliefs change. I forget, but you know what I'm saying? Being grounded is really nice. I know that it feels much nicer to be grounded than it is to like have your brain like being everywhere. And also, thank you, Beth, for saying that. And this shit is hard. Like this stuff is really, really hard. Like self-reflecting isn't cute or fun. It feels really uncomfortable. You have to realize that you were like really wrong and that a lot of things that you believed like didn't make sense. Like learning about the truth really hurts a lot. It really is not fun, y'all, to do this kind of work, but it's important. And if I want to do anything to be helpful to anyone, like I have to start being grounded in reality as well. So yeah, I invite you all to hang out in this reality land. It's really fun. Actually, no, it's not as fun as it's not as fun. That's another thing, guys. Reality it's not as fun. I'm going to be really real again. So when I talk about delusional beliefs, and I was kind of planning on doing this eventually, and I didn't think that would be on my YouTube channel, but here we go anyway. So some of the delusional beliefs that I held for a little while, a lot of things about aliens, those are big ones. Things like if we all raise our vibration high enough, like it sounds so ridiculous. Okay, so if we raise our vibrations high enough, like maybe like an alien species will come to our planet and like support us, like help us raise the vibration. And I was like, it was weird because I didn't really like, it wasn't like when I was a Christian and I was waiting for the second coming. It didn't feel quite like that. It was a little bit different. It was more like I would really like, because I didn't really think it was going to happen in my lifetime. The alien thing. I thought it was going to be, generations from now. But still, not cute that was a thing that I believed. Because the thing is that UFOs are very real. Like we have real evidence of UFOs existing, but we don't have real evidence that I know of extraterrestrial beings being on our planet. So, there's that. And so like when you're walking around and like you're believing this world where like you're believing that like aliens are like doing a lot of stuff on the planet oftentimes, and that like the earth is like filled with this like floating consciousness energy that's like magical all the time. You are living in a different world than the person who's just like, I'm going to work on a Tuesday and I believe that the earth is actually the literal earth. Like you're living in a different reality than other people. And the one thing that also struck me about the video we watched earlier was one of the guys mentioned, he said, a lot of these people who have these beliefs, they don't seem to have any of the other, qualities of things like schizophrenia or anything. They don't seem like they're mentally ill. They seem very sound people. Yeah. Go online right now and research alien channeling, and you will find a shit ton. Let's do it now. Okay. Let's just do it together, my friends. Alien channeling. I don't know how to spell. So yeah. So just yeah, I'm not going to really click on any of these or watch any of these right now. But for example, Demi Lovato wakes up to 3 extraterrestrial beings in their bedroom. Awesome. That is a really cool subjective experience. Most likely, since they were in their bedroom, and I know whatever, since they were in their bedroom, they were most likely, in some type of dream state and hallucinated beings in the room. It's very common. It is a very common experience to have very real hallucinations, especially when you are just waking up. Tactile hallucinations, people touching you, pain, like very real things. So you are very almost convinced that these things are actually happening, but they're not. They are happening within your own subjective experience. They are visual and auditory and tactile hallucinations. At least that is what evidence is showing us. Could there be a secret, mystical other reason? Sure. We just don't have any way to prove any of that. That's kind of where we're at. So look, tons of people, and also like you talk to Demi Lovato, like seems like a super sound person. They have mental health issues, but who doesn't? I have a ton of mental health issues, and you're listening to me. So, all right. So yeah, so like you have a ton of people channeling aliens. I've seen this guy. Yeah, I've seen this guy do his videos before. All of this stuff. There's tons of people who talk about all this alien whatever stuff. It's just stories. That's all it is. But stories are really fun. Stories are really exciting. And the thing is like, what is the purpose of all of these like hallucinations that people have? Like, what's the point of these things? Most likely it's like your subjective subconscious is trying to work some shit out. You're just trying to work out some stuff, trying to figure out what's going on in your life, and it comes out projected into your world out there. It is common for people who have had experiences with CSA to claim that they have had monsters torturing them or aliens abducting them and doing weird things with their privates and impregnating them, like things like that. If a child has had CSA happen, if there was abuse and they couldn't integrate the fact that their parent was harming them or something like that, it is much easier to say that you are being tormented by a monster than that your parents are harming you, right? So I hope this stuff makes a ton of sense to me, and I'm not saying that every single one is like this. The other thing that's important is I haven't finished the book yet because I'm working on another video where I'm reading the book for that. So it's called The Demon Haunted World by Carl Sagan. It's an incredible book so far. I'm not finished it, but he talks about the whole alien abduction thing. And one of the fascinating things to me that he brought up was that like way back in the 1800s or whatever, before there were flying vehicles at all, people would claim that short beings, like a group of short beings, would come and take them away into a castle in the sky and probe them and do creepy things and like impregnate them and all that stuff and then send them back down. Like, does that not sound very similar to like alien abduction stories that we're hearing right now? Tiny men, stealing you, taking you up to something in the sky, performing experiments, and then dropping you back home. I'm not saying it's the exact same thing, but it's interesting that before we had the idea of UFOs and aliens and stuff, we just had other creatures. People would have called them nymphs or fairies or goblins or whatever. It's just guys, y'all, it's just not that complicated. It's not that hard to figure this stuff out. But it's fun as shit. It is so much fun. I had a lot of fun when I believed that aliens were like, hanging out all the time, and that the person who was channeling the alien was like, for sure, like for real, channeling an alien from the Pleiades. Um, yeah, but y'all, this is just what it is. Like, and also, if you're a person who is believing this stuff and who shares these beliefs, I that's fine. Like, you really are allowed to believe whatever you want. I think my request would be that you kind of would understand that, like, your like the perspective of your belief, that your belief is kind of aligned with everybody else's. So like, you can't say, oh, I believe the aliens are going to come and get us and save the planet, and then say that like the second coming of Christ is a crazy idea. I think just be honest with yourself. That's really all I'm asking, is for you to be honest with yourself. I was honest with myself, and this happened. My entire structure of the way I understood reality changed, because I was confronted with evidence and I chose to take it seriously. If you want to not do that, that's your prerogative. But if you're interested, it's a nice thing to do. It's very relieving. Like I said kind of earlier, like I now feel like way more secure, way more grounded in reality. I feel happier than I really have before, much less confused about life in general, because now it's just, you're alive. Just like when it's always fascinates me when I hear about animals or insects that are only alive for like a day, or they have like a very, very short, like couple day lifespan. Like, that is interesting to me for some reason. And thinking about, like, how much life they have to live in such a short period of time, and they, reproduction is really important for them, and like they have to move very quickly, obviously, because there's not a lot of time. And for us, it's similar, and obviously in the grand scheme of reality, we're here for just such a short period of time, and um, it would be really sad, really, really sad, if we worked our whole lives for a different life. And if that was in terms of Christianity, we're working for the afterlife. And if you're a person who believes in multiple lives, you're working off karma from an old life in order to help support yourself in another life. That's a little bit of pressure, y'all. That's a little bit of pressure. I would feel pretty upset if I, found out that my next life person had a shitty life. I'd be like, fuck, man, like, I must have made a couple mistakes here. If my next life is, having such a shitty life, I must have left a lot of karma or whatever. I just think we don't need that, y'all. I think that we can just live happy lives, without nonsense, like without believing things that just don't matter. And the other thing that I want to mention briefly, I think, before I wrap this up, is the importance of fostering your internal world. So, like, the magical realm, the spiritual realm exists within your mind. In your mind, you can do all kinds of things. You can fly around, you can cast spells, you can be literally the god of your own subjective internal reality. You can learn how to astral project and leave your body and have a ton of fun in the astral plane, learn lessons, have lucid dreams. This is incredible stuff, and it also can be really, really helpful for your own personal development. When you're connected to your subconscious in this way, you're able to, I don't know, see a lot of these stories and stuff play out in your subconscious in an interesting way, and you're able to be like, okay, I'm wondering, like, what does this mean? What can I learn from this dream that I had? Not like, this dream was me actually going to another dimension, and now I'm magical. Like, there's a difference here. So I personally, since becoming an atheist, becoming more grounded in my spirituality, I have now kind of allowed myself to kind of go lean back into my spiritual side. I think since the summer-ish, that was a really tough time for me, because I kind of got hit hard by a particular, I was like obsessed with a spiritual teacher, and like it kind of got, my bubble popped really hard, and I was really disillusioned for everything spiritual wise. So I kind of dipped. But now I'm at a place I feel much more confident and much more interested in spirituality again, which is great because it's one of my special interests. So like I feel great when I get to engage in spirituality and learning these concepts and stuff. But now I know that like I can use these things, like I can use the entity of Jesus Christ as more of an archetype in my own consciousness to like help support me if I'm interested in that. I can work with other deities in my own consciousness if I want to, if that supports my own walk, my mental health, etc. I can do rituals and stuff in this world to help me solidify concepts in my mind, right? Like mental ideas about stuff. Like if I do a ritual for like, you know, strength or something like that, my opinion is that it's kind of like a placebo. Like it starts doing work back in the background of your subconscious mind and makes it more likely for you to kind of get those things done. Also would like to do another video about that in the future. There's another YouTuber called Sedna. I think it's Sedna Wu. And she talks a lot about skeptical and atheist witchcraft and inspired a lot of my practices that I'm doing right now. So yeah, there are a lot of ways that we can engage with spirituality and have a ton of fun with these concepts and ideas. I think that spirituality and magic even allow for people to play and like this childlike imagination and play. When you do like rituals and stuff, you're working with your hands and herbs and stuff, and you're putting stuff together. Very tactile. I feel like this stuff is very good for us as human beings, and those things can be fun if you're grounded in reality. And that way, you won't get bamboozled by others. Yeah, maybe next week. I'm not sure if it's going to be ready by then because I have another. It might be a really long article. I'm not sure if I'm going to have it finished, but another video that I'm going to work on is just like why spiritual people hate, like spiritual and religious people just like hate science so much. I hated science as a Christian, especially. A little bit less as a spiritual person, but I was also obsessed with pseudoscience, which is also problematic. So I think that's the next thing I want to talk about. But yeah, if you have any other ideas, make sure you pop a suggestion in the book. In the comments below. Also, check out the scroll here that's coming by the page. Like and share, follow. Make sure that you check out all of my other spots where I hang out on the internet. I like to do a lot of stories and stuff on Instagram. I'm on Instagram probably daily. And yeah, I don't know. Other ones I dabble on the other ones, I guess. And then also support me at Buy Me a Coffee. Yeah, I don't drink coffee, but you get the idea. You're buying me a cup of tea. I think that it says that you're buying me pizza when you go onto the website, which I think is pretty funny. So all of those things are the things that I wanted to pretty much talk about today. I had a really great time hanging out with you all. And I want to make this more consistent. So I don't want to officially say that I'm going to do this again next week, but I'd like to. I hope that I will be able to, and I have an idea to talk about. So, all right. Thank you all. I will hopefully see you again or see you sometime soon. Peace and love. I'll see you next time.